right. Hey, everybody. I have a light over here. Hopefully you can see me better, but if you can't, it's my face. So
it looks good. It looks
okay.
good.
All right. It looks better. All right. Good. I got kids starting as early as the 10th. A lot of them starting or somewhere in that time frame. And then I got, I'd say 50% the week after that. And then there's a real small percentage even the week after that. But most of my kids are starting in the next 2-ish weeks. So I am prepping my parents for transition because lots of kids struggle with transition. Summer to school, school to summer, whatever breaks that we have in between. Transition and not being in our routine can be difficult. And it's difficult for us adults too, right? I mean, transition sometimes is a little bit painful. But I'm expecting, not in a negative way, but I'm expecting some of my kids to have a little bit of difficulty, right? And so, especially with last year with so much, online schooling, and then, one of the kids even voiced his concern about going back to actual school because as he'll be transitioning from middle school into high school, and just there's a little bit of trepidation there. So I don't blame him, but let's talk about this. Heather, let me ask you this. So first of all, what makes it difficult for us as human beings for transition? Like, what is kind of going on there?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, change can be hard on anyone. But the reason that I'm glad you brought that up, because the first step in knowing how to help your kids with this is to identify patterns. We always talk about logging things, but why? Why does your specific child have difficulty? Sometimes, for example, because we have transition back to school, which is what we're focusing on, but even transitioning throughout the day can be difficult. Sometimes kids with ADHD or ish kinds of things might be hyper focused on something, and it's hard for them to have the cognitive flexibility to switch gears. Perfectionism can be a reason. I need to get this just right, and this transition is coming before I can get it just right. So we have those kinds of things, or that can be obsessive tendencies as well.
Yep.
And we have kids with autism or sensory processing disorder. The world doesn't make sense. Things are overwhelming, et cetera, et cetera. And from a sensory processing standpoint, you think about, I got my bearings about me. Maybe equilibrium is a challenge, whatever. The visual fray is not as much because everybody's in their spot. Things are quiet. And now we have people saying 5 minutes, and shuffle, putting things back into little toy boxes, clank, clank, clank. So it could be auditory. So we have to identify what the difficulty is. Working memory. My show on Monday that was also shared to your group page.
Yeah.
Working memory is a huge deal when it comes to transitions as well. So figure out what are the reasons it is hard for your child, and that gives you a starting point. How do you take care of a challenge if you don't know the source of the challenge in the first place?
Absolutely. And that, like you said, it's not a one sort of thing. Like each child could have, different
anxiety,
struggles, right?
not being able to predict, which we talk about a whole lot. So yeah, so many different things, and any child can have more than one of those as well. Just because we identify one, we want to keep looking to make sure we address all of the sources of it.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, I loved everything you touched on there. One of the big things, and like you said, we talk about this all the time, is just prediction, right? Like whether it's, transitioning from, I didn't go my first year because of COVID and I was all online, to now I'm meeting, some of my classmates, or it's a different school, or I'm transitioning from, whatever, middle school to high school. There's a lot that goes into that. Well, I know where to go. I remember in college, there's always a little bit of like you're a little nervous, like, where is building C, room 750? You're like, this doesn't make sense. You're like, I hope I can get there in time, right? So, even myself, I was like, I wonder if I could do this. Or you look at your schedule and you're like, well, one's here and the other one's across the way. Can you navigate this all? And so, It's a very real concern that we all have, right? It's just, can we do this all? Can we bring on this? And especially for those kids with neurodevelopmental stuff, a lot of times for them too, it's prediction, but it's also just the sensory change, right? Like, we transition, I get up, I move, or whatever's happening, and then I have to resettle down. So we have to keep navigating this, and that can be a tough for some of our kids to really do that. That this just as short transition from maybe changing classrooms, can be a lot for them to kind of settle back in and then refocus, right? And then you get into the middle of the class and you're already behind, and so that's tough.
Yeah. Like from the working memory standpoint, it really has to do with, it's a mental sketch pad. Like, how many balls can you juggle? We have a limited number of balls we can juggle. I was doing this activity. I just got the hang of juggling these balls. And now you're telling me to put those away. I don't mean toy balls. I mean like mental balls of what a task requires. And now I'm supposed to put those away and come over here and figure out which balls I'm supposed to juggle now. It is really a lot. It leads to a lot of cognitive overload. And so these conversations we always talk about having with kids, if you're watching your kids carefully and you've been logging things, are there certain transitions that they do fine with, certain ones they don't? Think about the factors preceding, during, and after the event to really start pinpointing those things, or think about things you already know to be true struggles for your children so that we can target that. But even kids who do not have neurodevelopmental struggles, transitions to a different school, transitions from, are we wearing masks or aren't we? Is it online, virtual, in person, new friends, new teachers, going from elementary to middle school to high school to college. All of those are going to have some anxiety associated with them, some uncertainty at least. And it doesn't mean that there's a neurodevelopmental challenge, but then it's just exacerbated if they are having other struggles.
And I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but right now getting into a schedule that's going to look at least somewhat similar to school hours, right? Like, getting in a bedtime routine or just starting to work towards that. So, because I remember when I went to college, it was like you burnt out the summer and then bam, you'd have an 8 a.m. class, and it was hard to get into that. But looking back, if I had transitioned a week or 2 weeks before and started getting to bed on time and preparing myself, it makes that transition a lot easier, right? And so start thinking about that now too. Always, always journal, always catalog this. But right now, if there's things that you can get into routine, your bedtime is one big one, right? Because when altered sleep ultimately impacts everything, right? Physical, emotional, chemical, impacts our entire being. So make sure that if there is anything like that, you can prepare. All right.
Aside from the schedule routine, as in less screen time and backing that down by 15 minutes a day or however you do it, bedtime and so forth, also have them start using their planner right now. What are the activities you have in the last couple of weeks of summer, and have them put down when they're going to happen, or have them plan out family movie night and each day write down what they need to do so that family movie night's ready to roll on Friday. There are so many ways. There's more ways to foster familiarity besides, that's another way to get into it that we don't always think about. A planner requires executive function. If you're going to cook something, if you're going to play a game, if you're going to run some errands and they have issues with time management, ask them to predict how long it's going to take to run these errands and then compare how long it took to what they said. And you can even make it like you're just guessing. Just give your best guess so that they don't have a fear of failure on that. But that can also start translating into them having opportunities to understand how long an assignment will take. There's so many ways to incorporate these things that don't really require time. They just require a little bit of thinking through things ahead of time. There are just so many ways. Note-taking. If note-taking is a thing, and if you already know your kids are struggling or they're moving into a grade where for the first time they're actually sort of listening to lectures, have them take notes about the chores they're going to do or the errands you need them to run if they're old enough to do that, or have them write down the things that you need from the grocery store. That is a less threatening way to practice note-taking. That's auditory processing. It's visual motor integration. And just there are lots of low-stakes ways to start practicing these things that will give kids a little bit of confidence heading in.
Absolutely. And as we transition, like one of the things that I do just for myself personally, and I heard of, Mark Zuckerberg and others doing this first, but I'll wear the same pair of pants for an entire week, assuming they're obviously not, very dirty, right? So I do wash my clothes. Please don't misinterpret that. But I take off the burden of picking, I have a shirt that I can wear, so I only have about 4 or 5 choices I'm going to make. And it's just picking your shirt and going. But I'm wearing the same pair of pants. And so it reduces the burden. So, thinking about assuming they don't have some sort of very specific dress code, having them lay out their clothes the night before, making that choice so that when you're getting up, you're like, oh no, what do I wear? Or do I have pants? Or, where's that shirt I wanted to find? They're not rushing into that, especially during those first few weeks where there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stress, just even prepping, just the morning routine, getting that like, all right, Johnny, what are we going to wear tomorrow? Let's get that out so that we don't have to go find it, or we make sure it's already clean, or I need to wash this. I know tonight and not tomorrow morning that I need to prep this. But it makes your life a lot easier. It sounds silly, but it really does work.
I have to be kind of nerdy for a second and talk about the neurology behind that. What you're doing when you do that, besides making just a morning smoother and fewer things to do, from a cognitive standpoint, you are offloading some of the burden, because working memory is a finite sketch pad. I can only hold so many pieces of information up here. When you lay out the clothes the night before, or even on the weekend, you could lay out a week's worth of clothes, take pictures of them, and then the kids match the picture each day. You are offloading some of the balls they're having to juggle, because that is something that does not need to be figured out. And the reason our kids who have learning differences, they're diagnosed with ADHD or ish types of struggles, whether diagnosis or not, is because those kids are often churning through tasks that are automated for the rest of us. So they are having to juggle more balls to do routine tasks the rest of us take for granted. And so what we're doing is their sketch pad, their working memory just got cut in half on handling just daily tasks like that look like, disorganization, time. Well, they don't look like that. They are time management and so forth. We are freeing up space on that sketch pad to make up for the churns they're having in other areas.
Yeah, I am telling you, I mean, you would think it's almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Trivial. That's what I'm looking for. Like not picking your pants and your shirt the morning of. I can easily do it, but it's just a task I don't have to do in the morning when I get up. This is what I'm wearing and I go. And so it makes it a lot easier on me. And I'm dressed. I don't have hair to comb either, so that helps too. But I mean, I am, it takes me 90 seconds to get ready, because I already know I don't have to find anything. It's already been, I took several of those balls I would need to juggle in the morning, and I've already put them away so that it's done. So just little things like that can make a massive impact on just the fluidity of your morning and keeping it going. So, Heather, she provided me with 2 amazing resources. Do you want to talk about these resources and then I can add them on, or what's the best way to
Well, you usually ask me for resources, and I saw right before we went live what our topic was going to be. So I know 2 resources off the top of my head that are really good. If you have, these are for younger kids who are struggling with transitions in general, not just back to school, challengingbehavior.org. And then I gave Dr. Aspie another one from Vanderbilt. Those are just outstanding resources, and they have very specific ones pertaining to transitions. And so I wanted to share those. For older kids, we've talked about this before, but fostering familiarity is important across the age spans. And now we have also new considerations with all the changes in schools that have happened over the past year or more. I'm losing track of time. It's been over a year now. But practicing locker combinations, a lot of kids, you may just think, well, goodness gracious. I mean, once you got it, you should have it. But you have memory, you have fine motor, you have visual motor, you have spatial planning. Do they know where their locker is? Practicing going from classroom to classroom, planning ahead when they should pick up books. There might be times when students need to grab their books and supplies for the next 2 or 3 classes, because they may not have time to go back to their locker between every single class. So doing all of that in advance, if they have equilibrium, body awareness, visual issues, they really may have trouble finding their locker. How many things can you put inside the planner where it's the locker combination? It's getting permission from teachers, like, can you have little cheat sheets of certain formulas for math, certain prefixes, suffixes, whatever it is that's hard for your child, where you are offloading some of those balls that they can then use to apply to problems they're having. Decorating the locker, kind of planning out for that to where it's a place they can be proud of and want to keep it looking a certain way. If they're sharing a locker, kind of role playing and talking through how to deal with it if someone is taking up part of their space in the locker. I mean, there are so many things to think about when kids are actually switching classes. But just, and if you can't get into the school, driving by the school, going onto the playground, kind of pointing even from the outside, this is where the cafeteria is, this is where the gym is. What are some things you think you'll be doing there? But talk to your kids. How are you feeling about school? What do you think you're going to learn this year? And they will open up some by asking questions that don't sound threatening. You're not like, what are you worried about this year? Because then you can foster worry that wasn't there to begin with.
Right.
But asking open-ended questions, what are you most excited to learn? Whatever it is, it's going to open a dialogue, and doing this every day to where we're not going to sit down and talk about school. It's while you're running errands. It's while you're sitting on the swing in the backyard and having these conversations, and just even talking through it starts making it feel more familiar. Being able to hang out with friends or have phone calls or virtual hangouts or something with friends that they're going to be in class with. That's just one less new thing they have to deal with.
Yes, 100%. I love it all. Prediction familiarity is very comforting to the brain. The brain loves it, right? It's less energy consuming. And that's how I think about a lot of things, right? Like how taxing is this on me or on the kids that I work with, right? Like, is this behavior taxing? Is what's going on, very taxing for them? And when we have things that are taxing, we don't know, we're unfamiliar, or we have this maybe unidentified anxiety. Like that's why open-ended questions are amazing, because the kids can open up and kind of find stuff that's going on. But when we have this, it impacts us, right? And ultimately then it impacts our autonomic nervous system, or our fight or flight system, as people commonly call it. And that alters everything. It's not uncommon for our kids to have sleeping issues in the beginning, or GI issue concerns, right? Or, hey, do you ever wonder why we all get kind of sick right at the start of school? Yes, you encounter more people, but kids are stressed out, right? Like there's this whole new world coming on, and man, it taxes their system, and they don't sleep as well, and their nutrition's off. It just makes you more susceptible to getting sick. And so, all this plays just such an important role. So Heather gave you some amazing advice. I have put those links, those resources in the comments. I hope they work. It looked like it copied weird, so I was trying to, I think it works, but let me know if it doesn't. I'll be happy to add those back in. But we kind of went through everything I wanted to go through, Heather. Is there anything else you want to touch on? Like we touched on a lot here, really, what I wanted to do.
I think just a couple more things is that are really important is to already start talking to your kids about extracurriculars for the year.
That's good.
Because if you've already got school going, and then you start having, and everyone's more stressed out because the school year has begun, the pressure's setting in, there might be heightened emotions and things about, I don't know that we're going to be able to do X, Y, Z this year. Won't go as well as it will when everything is kind of cool right now. And not just about what they can do, but what can you eliminate? We want kids to be involved. We want them to have social engagement. We want them to be able to broaden their horizons and explore their strengths. But we do not want them to have CEO schedules. Everyone needs downtime. It will make everything work. No matter how much they enjoy activities, if there are too many of them, then it adds to the balls they're juggling, and overwhelm sets in, and then something has to give. They cannot give all to everything. I mean, that's hard for us as adults sometimes, is saying no to things. And so I think that's just one more important conversation to start having while things are more peaceful right now, hopefully.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Yeah, so what can we take off the burner to help reduce the demand? Is that that's ultimately what you're kind of saying, right? Yep.
Yeah. I mean, extracurriculars are great, but they don't need one every day.
It is. I'm impressed that parents are able to do them every day.
I'm blown away by some of our parents have really good working memories, because they're, we got 4 kids and they're each in 6 things, and the way they juggle all that, it's impressive. It is impressive. But I think also sometimes there's pressure, and especially in social media age, well, so-and-so's family's doing it, and so my child's going to be, Tommy gets to do it. Why don't I, all of these comparisons, whether they're intentional or unintentional, nobody can do it all. And you're not a bad parent if you take something off your slate and your child's slate. I mean, what are the most important things? And then everyone's more likely to enjoy the ones that you do pick and choose from.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing I want to add on is, if there are extracurriculars, or no, this is one of the things I wanted to say. Going in and transitioning, kids can go from more active during the summer to going to just sitting all day. So that schedule is going to change, and their physical movement and all the stuff that our brain needs and requires and loves is going to start settling off. And so lots of my kids will get antsy and they'll kind of get fidgety because their bodies, I mean, my 5-year-old son just runs just all day, just battery, and it's just nonstop, right? And so you have these kids who are able to move more, free more, and then we go to sitting. So the thing I wanted to say is make sure that you incorporate, some time for movement. Movement is so important. We talk about that all the time. It's really what feeds our brain. Our brain loves it. The sensation, the movement, the contraction, all that stuff is very, very important for our brain. So just when you're thinking about things that maybe we need to offload, right? Like take off the plate. If there's things that you could replace them with, I would replace them with forms of movement, right? Like, hey, we're not going to go do this activity, but maybe we can go play catch together, right? And so that's a time where you can offload a lot of stress, and you're not having to maybe go somewhere, but you can get out and be physical and move and do something. And a lot of times, my parents love that because it's a time to connect. You can talk to them about their day. They're active, we can decompress, but it's still something to do, right? And so look for ways that you can connect, catch, whatever you want to do, shoot baskets, play horse, it doesn't matter. They're all movement, but that's a great way to connect and just keep their bodies moving, right? So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Whew.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was just thinking in my head, and then it came right out of your mouth. I'm like, if you have so many extracurriculars that you don't have time to connect one-on-one with your kids, there are too many extracurriculars. Yeah.
And like you mentioned, we have so many amazing parents that are trying to do everything for the kids and get them involved. And I just think to myself, man alive, I'm burnt out listening to your schedule. So, but try to incorporate that stuff, with your kiddos. Decompress a little bit, decompress with them, right? That's a great way to connect and do that all. So you can still, what's the word? You're so much more supportive when you can be there, right? Doing things with them, in my opinion. But all right. Anything else you want to touch on, Heather?
No, that's good.
Perfect. All right. I think we're having still a little bit of an internet issue. It might be on my end. I've been getting a little alerts that my Wi-Fi is not very good. So I apologize if it's been choppy on my end. But we're walking into school. Make sure you're journaling. Make sure you're looking for areas or consistent struggles. That will help you. If you can help with prediction, make sure you go by the school and talk about the classes. Make sure you ask open-ended questions. These are things that we say all the time, but they're so important. And it's just always a good reminder to stay on top of these things as best as you can. Obviously, we don't want to overburden you, but the best that you can, because it ultimately helps you understand what's going on and helps us understand your kids as well. All right. That is it for today. This is a short one. We did good. We're knocked it right out of the park. All right. So if you jump on later, you have questions, please comment. As always, we love to answer those. We will not be here next week, and I'm just telling Heather this now. Okay. So, and the only reason is just because today it was finalized. We are picking up our kids from the Midwest next Thursday, and so I will be on the road. So we will not have a show next week, but we will be back the following week. I will be here, and we can jump back into this all. But we will not be here next week. We'll be here the following week. But don't worry, Heather has a Monday podcast at 2:00. Do you have one this week, or is upcoming?
I did until this afternoon, and I found out the producer can't be there. So I think there will be a replay of one from recently. That's what we usually do, is a replay from a while back.
Okay, awesome. Maybe we'll replay one of ours. That's not a bad idea. So yeah, I will look back and we could replay one of those. So next week, you guys all get a week off, all right? But we will be back the following week. Heather, though, I mentioned the podcast. Somebody wants to find you, watch those podcasts. How do they find you?
At The Hidden Churn on Instagram or Facebook, or Brain Balance of the Woodlands, Mansfield, Katy, or South Lake.
Make sure you go like all those pages, follow her. Has a wonderful, absolutely must watch Monday podcast. So make sure you watch those, attend those, ask questions, all that fun stuff. If you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me at 972-387-4700. All right. So we'll be off next week, but we'll be back the following week. Heather, as always, thank you for everything you do for the communities that you serve. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.